In high-stakes meetings, what you don't say is just as powerful as what you do. So if you desire to be strategic or seen as strategic and not just tactical, your language must reflect it. In this video, we're going to talk about 7 phrases that CEOs never say, so you know exactly what to avoid. The first 5 of these phrases are phrases that are commonly spoken out loud, and the last 2 phrases are phrases that are commonly spoken inside our own heads. Let's start with the first commonly spoken phrase that instantly makes you sound more junior. And here's the phrase. It's, I think, could. Now, this exhibits in different ways. It could be, for example, you might be saying, I think I could achieve this, or I think we could do better next time, or I think we could meet the deadline if. So it exhibits in many different ways. Could is sometimes substituted with should. Now, this phrase, I think, could, or should, it sounds innocent, but it positions you as you're just guessing. Because here's the thing, I think is non-committal. Now, when you say, I think, anything that follows after it, senior level executives, when they hear that, they're immediately thinking, what, are you thinking? Are you guessing? Or do you have a doubt that you can achieve that? Is there some doubt? And here's the thing about could expresses an epistemic possibility, but it does not express capability. So when taken together, it really sounds like you have a degree of uncertainty or doubt over yourself, your knowledge, or your idea that you're going to share next. And when you say, I think could or I think should, it really expresses something that is, I'm just floating an idea here. I'm not really laying down strategic direction, just floating an idea. It comes across that way. And as a result of that, you could appear overly cautious. You could appear non-committal, but it really does undermine your leadership presence. The second phrase is this one. Sorry, just one quick point. Or sorry, if I could just say one more thing. Or sorry, if I could just say something really quickly. Now, the word sorry is an apology. And when you lead something with sorry, really what you're saying but not saying is, what I have to say is not important enough to take space. Becoming apologetic about what you have to say means I don't believe in what I have to say, so I have to apologize before I say something, and it really undermines what you're about to say before you've even said it. So this is really important because when you apologize and then state what comes next, especially if you couple it with, can I just make a quick point? Or can I just say something, sorry, can I just say something quickly? Then sorry and quickly, what it really does is it undermines your self-perception and your self-confidence, and it really does undercut what you believe, how much status you believe you have in the room. Now, you might find yourself saying this, sorry if I could just say something quickly, you might find yourself saying this more often or maybe only when you're in the room of more senior leaders or senior executives. If so, then take notice. Because the apology stems from a thought, an unconscious thought, or maybe a semi-conscious thought that you don't want to waste someone's time, or you don't want to say something that they don't want to hear, or you don't want to say something wrong, or you don't want to stir the pot too much. And that apology is really important to note because it really puts you in a position where you're not equal to them, but there is a status differential. And it really says that I don't feel like what I have to say is as important as what has been said already. So be careful when you apologize before saying something. It really could position yourself as someone less confident in who you really are. The third phrase that CEOs never say sounds like this. I'm not sure if this is, but. Now, there's so many different ways this could play out. For example, it could be, I'm not sure if this is going in the right direction, but. Or it could be, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but. Or I'm not sure about what you're looking for, but it plays out in so many different ways. The nuances don't matter. Essentially, when there is that construction of a sentence, I'm not sure if this is, but, then really what you're saying is, I could be wrong, but. And as you can see, when you position this way, you're really essentially positioning yourself as, I could be wrong, I'm uncertain about what I have to say next, or I'm uncertain about how you're going to receive it, or I haven't really thought this through. And it really portrays that level of thought process or the lack of thought process. And as a result of that, it really can undermine your presence and your expertise. It really can undermine how well you've thought it through, or it really can undermine the belief you have in what you're about to say and the confidence you have in yourself and your expertise. Now, in my experience, having worked with multiple senior level executives in different industries, I hear this phrase most often in senior executives when they desire to be collaborative and they desire to make a connection without sounding dominating. And so they hedge it by saying, well, I'm not sure, but because they desire to make a connection with the people they're communicating with. Now, but if you phrase it that way, remember the essence really comes across as I could be wrong. And as a result of that, really what you're doing is you're undermining your leadership presence. So here's the thing, let's break this down. I'm not sure, that first phrase, it really is saying that you're not as convicted in what you're about to say next. You're not convicted, you don't have a strong belief in it, or for some reason, you have doubts about it. And as a result of that, it really does undercut your thought processes and your expertise. So then, although it might sound like you're being polite or politically correct, or you're softening it so you're not dominating the conversation, be careful, because when used in the moments where you really desire to be seen as more strategic, or when used in moments where you need to be more persuasive and get buy-in, it really can have the opposite effect. This next phrase is a curious one. I hear it most often when executives are presenting in front of leadership team or presenting in front of their higher-ups. And usually there's like a PowerPoint, a slides presentation, and they've done some rehearsal beforehand. But I hear this phrase a lot among the clients that I've coached. And here's what the phrase is. It's, does it make sense? And there's a variety of different ways this can be conveyed. So some people say, does it make sense? Or am I making any sense? Or does it make sense to you? Or does that make any sense? Like the nuances are there, but the essence is still the same. The essence is, does it make sense? And there's a question. So you see, when you say this, it casts doubt, because really, what you're saying is, I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. So I got to ask you, check in with you, is it making sense to you? Now, if you say this phrase, instead of getting buy-in for your idea or the thing that you're presenting, what you're getting buy-in for is, why are they asking whether or not it makes sense? Because that confusion is framed as a question, does it make sense? So you can either be conveying one or two things. You can either be conveying a confusion or an insecurity about your own communication, being able to convey the data points clearly to your listener. So it could be perceived that way by the audience. Why are you asking me if it doesn't make sense? Is it because you're not confident that you've conveyed it well or conveyed it effectively? Are you doubting your own communications? So it can be perceived that way. The second way this can be perceived is that you have lack of confidence or insecurity about the capability of your audience to understand you. All right. In which case, if you phrase it that way and your audience picks up on that perception instead, well, it doesn't really feel good if you don't have confidence in your audience's capability to understand you, right? Does it make sense? Right? You see what I mean? But it has that effect. So be careful. For you, your intent may be sincere. I just want to check in with you to make sure before I go on that you don't have any questions. And then if that's true, then why don't you say it that way? Now, I've said a lot. I just want to check in with you to make sure that you don't have any questions or if there's anything that I can clarify further. That is more equanimity. There's more equity there than if you said, does that make sense? Does that make sense produces inequity, because if it's perceived that you don't believe in me, that I can understand you, there's inequality. But if it's perceived as, are you not confident in your own capability to communicate well, then there's still inequality. But if I check in with you, that creates authenticity and creates connection, then there's equity. So be careful with this phrase, does it make sense? The next phrase that CEOs never say is very short, and it sounds like this: we can't. Right? Anything that follows after we can't, but it starts with we can't. You see, the phrase we can't is absolute negation. It means I've shut down all possibilities before I've even explored them. And if you're saying we can't in front of senior leaders, in front of your higher ups or a room of peers, then you come across more like an implementer rather than a leader, which is solutions oriented. Really, if you think about it, we can't. It really comes across as resignation or defensiveness and not strategy. The phrase "we can't" positions you as a blocker and not a problem solver. And when you say "we can't" in moments where we are trying to make a decision or you need to get buy-in for your idea, you really do come across as somebody who may not be able to overcome obstacles. Because remember, in leadership, it's not about identifying problems all the time. It really is about how do you frame reality? How do you understand the obstacles that are at hand? And what are all the options we can give ourselves to be able to overcome those obstacles? And when you say "we can't," spoken out loud, you also hear yourself saying it as well. So it really works on you on a subconscious level when you say "we can't." Now, the remaining two phrases are not spoken out loud in executive rooms, but they are thought silently. And here's the first phrase. It goes like this: "That's way above my pay grade." It can also be thought of as "I'm not paid well enough for this," or "they can't pay me enough to do this." Variations of that. So it's a thought, a silent thought, and not necessarily spoken out loud. But here's the thing though, thoughts create our beliefs, and then reinforced thoughts also go to shape our actions. When we say I'm not being paid enough for this, or "that's above my pay grade," what we really do is deferring ownership and saying that's not my problem, that's someone else's problem. And this creates a passivity, a overdependence on hierarchical structures rather than strategic ownership. And remember, when it comes to ownership, there's the understood and the spoken ownership of these are the things that are on your job description and this is your responsibilities. These are the spoken expectations, yes. But in case you desire to step up in leadership, in case you desire to be top of mind for bigger opportunities, in case you desire to be more visible and have more influence, then it would be wise to look at the things that you could take ownership of that may not be spoken expectations on your job description. So this is like the gray zone areas of ownership, right? Leadership often comes at the intersection of those gray zones of ownership. And this is really extreme ownership. So be careful when you are thinking this, because your thoughts do shape your actions. And what happens when, the unconscious thought is "that's above my pay grade," what happens is that you don't speak up. You don't raise your hand. You don't volunteer. You don't jump in. You don't find solutions. You don't become more visible. And as a result of that, there are missed opportunities. There's going to be a vision, an image of how people see you and how they're used to you and how they see you in terms of what you do take ownership of and what you don't take ownership of. And there's just going to be an understanding of where you do step up and where you don't step up. Now, if that perception does not match with where you want to be, then it's important to reflect. How are my thoughts shaping my actions? And how are my thoughts persistently over time shaping my beliefs and therefore shaping my actions? And does it align with the outcome I want to have? Because when things are thought of over time, that leads to things that are done over time. And thoughts are always going to be aligned with beliefs that are always going to be aligned with actions. So it's important to reflect and be honest with yourself of, are these thoughts that I'm having serving me? Or sometimes you might not be even aware of what you've been thinking. But what you are aware of is the result is not where you want it to be. So you can start there and work backwards, and oftentimes it can trace back to a single thought. The second unspoken phrase, but it's often thought internally, sounds like this: "I'll just do it myself." Right? How many of you are guilty of saying that? "I'll just do it myself." Or "No one can do this better than me. I just got to do it myself." Right? So then be careful, because thoughts become your actions, and over time they become your results. So the thought phrase, "I'll just do it myself," really, what it really does is it signals an identity of being an implementer, an implementer's identity, instead of one who delegates and one who leads. Now, when people see you doing it yourself, really, it signals that you have a higher value over speed and taking control. You place a higher priority or a value on speed and control versus looking for leverage and focusing on leadership, empowerment of others. And so there's a values differential, there's a priority differential. And this is important to realize in yourself, because it's now the question of why. Why is that priority there? Because on the outset, if people see you doing it yourself, when there could have been leverage, where there could have been leadership, where there could have been the transference or delegation of responsibility, when people see you doing that, it really could be projected as, well, is it that you just don't trust anybody? Or is it that you're used to hoarding control over it? Maybe there could be something territorial happening there. Maybe there could be something like, territorial of intellectual property, or territorial of I want to take credit for that. Or it could be projected and perceived as conflict avoidance. Because if I need to manage others, lead others, well, then that's just people problems, and I don't want to deal with that. So it could be perceived as conflict avoidance. So be careful about the signals it gives off. Just simply, and it may sound innocent at first, I'll just do it myself because I know I can do it well, and I know that nobody else can do it as good as I can. Be careful. That might sound innocent in the get-go, but as the company grows, in case you desire to grow with the company, it would be wise to revisit that thought and that belief. Because if you're busy doing everything yourself, then the bandwidth, the focus, the energy, the intellect is all in implementation. And at some point, as the company grows, the team expands, the opportunity for you to step up into bigger picture decisions or bigger picture roles, you won't have the bandwidth for that. You wouldn't have developed the intellect for that because you've been doing it all yourself. Keep in mind, when you're doing it all yourself and you have that thought and that belief, there's 3 ways that other executives, more senior executives, could perceive you. The first way is they can perceive you as having low leverage. So highly under-leveraged, and therefore doing the busy work and stuck in implementation, low leverage. The second way that senior executives can perceive you is having a trust gap. Either you don't trust other people, or you don't trust yourself to be able to delegate that to other people. Where is the trust issue? And the third way that could be perceived, if you're doing it all yourself, is that there is a lack of process, lack of systems, right? Because if you are doing it all yourself, it could be that you don't understand, you don't have enough business acumen to build the right processes and the right systems for delegation and leadership and empowerment, and to be able to trust when you have processes in place. So be aware that just something as innocent as I'll do it myself, you may perceive that as taking responsibility. Right? You might take that as I am taking initiative, right? But as the company grows, there's a threshold if you desire to be perceived at the next level. This thought could be holding you back. Just remember, language is leadership, and what you say and what you think determines what you do. And as a consequence of what you do, it really does shape how people do perceive you. Now, leaders are not so much focused as on everything they do and everything they must take care of, but they really are deliberate on every syllable that they speak and every syllable and what they mean by that. In other words, they say what they mean and they mean what they say, because language is leadership.